Good afternoon, dear audience, and welcome on behalf of the Publications Office of the European Union. Welcome to our annual eSenders meeting. My name is Manuela Cruz. I'm the head of the TED and EU Procurement Unit at the Publications Office. It's my pleasure to guide you through this seminar. And to start with, I would pass the floor to our Acting Director General, Mr. António Carneiro, for his welcome address. António, the floor is yours.
C'est bon? Vous m'entendez?
Oui, oui.
OK. Et vous me voyez aussi. OK? So, sorry. Let's switch to English. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our annual eSenders meeting. Thank you for being here. This year, we'll be very much focused on the future eForms. eForms are a golden opportunity to improve the procurement data that is published. The improvement on data quality should, on one hand, facilitate for economic operators their search for suitable contracts in line with their profile of interests and competencies, and on the other hand, ensure better transparency on public procurement activities in providing answers to questions such as who buys, what, from whom, and for how much. For the last 2 years, we have been working very hard to put in place the tools that will shape eForms. The work is still ongoing, and the Publications Office will be ready in due time to support the publication of contract notices using eForms. You will be kept informed all along the road. We would also like to hear from you. Where do you stand in the implementation of eForms? Which are your main concerns? And if you can share with us your tips and tricks. We are here at your service. Let's make the best of this meeting. I wish you an interesting and productive meeting. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, António, for this welcoming address. I will start by giving you a few information about how the seminar will take place and how we will lead you through these 3 days. So again, this year the seminar is fully online. It's the second time. We are all getting used to it, so we all know the rules and the tricks. However, we know that inevitably there may be some hiccups and issues, so we would like to apologize in advance if that is the case. If there are sound issues, connection issues, For those who have been already in the publications office, you know that we are under the corridor leading to the Luxembourg airport. So there may be planes passing by at some stage. And there are some roadworks, as those who have been here 2 years ago may remember. So the works are still there. There may be some nuisance because of that. So we are sorry, but we hope to make the best of it. Anyway, we have a super support team. We have Laura, Panos, Corinne, and Jenny there for us for anything that we may be needing. So hopefully it will all be fine. So the seminar this year includes 3 main blocks, one starting this afternoon, and 2 other blocks tomorrow morning and Wednesday morning. You have the agenda, you have the times for each of the sessions and presentations. The timetable is set in Central European Time Zone, so please remember that when trying to connect. The sessions this afternoon will be mainly focused on the one hand on the eSenders management as it is today. So we will give you an update on that. And then we will have a general overview of eForms implementation, where we are. And then for tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, we will get into the detail of where we are in terms of implementation at the level of publications office and what we can do for you. Some housekeeping rules. So please mute your microphones. Please turn off your cameras. We will keep the microphones on, of course, and the cameras on as well for the speakers. If you have any questions, please send them through the chat, and we will address them at the end of each presentation. My colleague Ana Maria will launch the questions at the end of each presentation. There will be also time for addressing questions at the end of each session, at the end of each day, and at the end of the seminar on Wednesday. And if there are still questions that haven't been answered, you are free to send them to the TED help desk, and we will try to cope with them as soon as we can, and as accurately as we can, of course. We will have a set of presentations. As usual, the presentations will be published. Actually, they are already published this year. If you go to the website of the meeting, you will already see some of the presentations. In case there are some changes between the presentations that are currently published and the ones that are going to be given today, we will, of course, do the necessary updates. There are always last-minute changes that we try to deal with. As I said, this year's seminar is much focused on eForms. We are all working very hard and we are all very busy with that. And we know that there is a lot of concern and interest from you as well. We can see that by the number of participants in this year's seminar. It's quite impressive. So we would like to hear from you, and we will be asking questions as well. We will be using Slido. You may have seen prior to the start of the meeting that there was a link to Slido. We will be publishing some questions, and we hope to get some answers, because that will also give us an indication of what your concerns are, what you expect from this meeting, in which way we can help you. We will issue a survey at the end, also through Slido. It would be very helpful to help us improve for next year's seminar, which we hope may be face-to-face, but in the worst case scenario, will still be online as this year. So I think I covered all my introduction, unless any of my colleagues tells me otherwise. And I would like to ask Constantina, in that case, to launch the first Slido questions. Constantina, to you.
Hello, good afternoon from me as well. We have prepared some questions to get feedback and get to know you better. You can join through Slido, there's a link in the chat, there's a QR code, or you can just go to slido.com and enter the code that you see, 959111. I see some people have already voted and signed in. So our first question is, what is the temperature like where you are now? So freezing cold, happy to warm up at the seminar. Chilly, it is cold to be here. Warm, nice to join you. Or very hot, we are thirsty for news. So if you could please vote so we get to know a bit where you come from. Right, we have 33 votes. Wait a little longer because there's a lot of people participating. And most come from cold countries, I see so far, majority. The vast majority, I would say, 56% so far. Right, I'll move to the next question. And if you haven't voted, you can still vote. Oh, well, there are a lot of votes. I'll wait a little longer. All right. Still going up, so 60% chilly. All right, let's move on to the next question. We have 72 participants so far. This is an open question, so which country are you joining us from? You can dial it and send it. Many very different countries. Right. Really every country of the EU. Luxembourg as well is included. 76 votes, it's going faster. Yeah, it looks like everyone's represented. Right, so 86 participants. I'll move to the last one for now, and we have a few more at the end. So how long have you been an eSender? Less than 2 years, 2 to 5 years, more than 5 years, or not applicable, I'm not an eSender. Right? So the majority is an eSender and has been for a long time. I'll wait a little longer, so that's reached 85, 86. And then we'll come back at the end with some feedback questions on the presentations. All right, so more than 5 years, 57%. And the second most popular option, I'm not an eSender, with around almost 30% of the votes. Well, great, thank you so much, and see you at the end of the session. Let me see if I can stop sharing my screen. Yes. Oh, sorry. Moment.
Thanks a lot, Konstantina.
Yes, thank you.
For this first introduction, and it's nice to see who our audience is. Okay, let's then move to the first substantial item of our agenda, and I would like to invite Karl to give us an overview of what's up as regards the eSentool and the eSenders management in general. So Karl, when you are ready, the floor is yours.
Oh, hello, good afternoon. Microphone is on. It's good to welcome you here and to see so many of you. This is my first eSenders seminar. I joined the team a few months ago. For those who knew Annalisa Vaca, I'm replacing her. And my presentation will be the only one that doesn't talk about eForms. So let's share the presentation. Should be able to see it now. Okay. So I'll be talking to you about eSentool and about the data that you send us, content itself. So we'll just recap what has changed in eSentool in the past year since last year's meeting, the changes that are planned for at the end of this month, and then give you an overview about your questions to the help desk and the quality of the data you send us, the warnings and the errors, and a few general issues. So focusing on eSentool first, see where we've come. So the change that happened not long after last year's seminar was a change to NUTS 2021. It's quite a big change for everyone. There was a technical patch which hopefully didn't notice, went smoothly. And then there's a change we're carrying out now, which some of it was announced in in spring. But as you pointed out, it just changed from NUTS. So we combined the change to the XML schema with the rule changes into one package for this autumn. So the NUTS change affected both schemas, both the main schema and the defense schemas, and the rules changed to version 0.39, and the transition ended in April. Everyone managed to move by then. There was enough time. And what shouldn't be a surprise to you, but just a reminder of what is changing now on the 30th of November. Both schema changes and rule changes, all starting on the 30th of November in all three environments: qualification, simulation, and production. So for the main schema 209, there'll be a new version of the schema, and there's a new version of the rules 040. From the 30th of November to the 31st of January, there will be a transitional period. So until the 30th of January for this schema, you can continue sending what you have. And after the end of January, if you're using the old schema, they will be rejected. For the defense schema, the rules, which we'll come to, will be applied directly on the 30th of November. So view those in a second. There's no need to qualify. We will qualify you all automatically. If you need more details, we added a specific section on the wiki with the details of the new schema and all the XSLT rule changes. So the schema itself only affects the 209 schema. There's new version 5, and it only affects form T01, the transport one. And it's basically for new types of elements that have been added, which are listed here. Extended the list. And the rule changes, I'll just review the 4 where there's actually changed to an error. There are other smaller changes which are mainly housekeeping ones. So affecting both schema, this error, the rule 619, which is about the sum of the amounts. So if you have the lots, have to add up to the total, if they're all the same currency. There's fixed to a change, an alignment for the defense forms, that if you have a previous publication, you must fill in the reference. This brings it in line with the 209. And these two will apply to the 208 schema with no transition on the 30th of November. 2 more tightening of rules for the 209 with the new schema. Again, some tidying up for this rule that only 3 legal bases are valid for it. And another error to make sure that the previous publication has been entered for rather old ones. Now I'll talk about the quality of the notices we receive from you. To feedback, to give you an idea of how we support you through the help desk. These are informational questions. Too many. There's a variety of questions about qualification, registration.
Karl, I'm afraid that you've stopped sharing your screen.
Okay, sorry. Is back?
Yes, it's back.
Okay. Thanks. These are the help desk requests we get. The technical questions are more specific and more numerous. You can see earlier in the year, there were questions about the current schema, dark blue one. This was related to the nuts change and the announcements of what would change. Later in the year, the light blue one are eForms questions. So we can see from spring onwards, it's the main source of questions, which is, so indeed, I am talking about eForms in this presentation as well. We hope the following presentations will bring some answers for you. So on the quality of the notices you send us, the vast majority are warnings. So you can have more than one quality issue per notice. That's how we get to over 1 million warnings. And to give you a breakdown, these are the warnings triggered by the XSLT rules when you connect to eSentool. And we can see that section 5 is where basically we're missing information. So they're not blocked, but this is where an improvement in quality would be welcome. If you can add this, if you could have warnings on your sites, this would reduce these numbers. Information about contract award notices, basically. To the next one. And there was also some warnings in the first quarter as we switched to the new schema, which no longer exist. Again, for the forms themselves, this contract award notice is where the quality is most needed to be improved. And these are the rejections. So these are notices that don't get through at all. So invalid XML, the metadata is not valid. There was a Brexit effect, the first few months of the year especially. And then I believe most of the errors are self-explanatory. And they could be fixed if you want to reduce rejections for your users to validate some of these checks before they get rejected by us. So have a look what is getting rejected, and this would make for a smoother workflow as you send us. Again, contract award notices, contract notice are the main ones, which can be improved, and you won't get the XSLT rejections. What we call production figures, these are the warnings and errors which are picked up by our external contractor who read every single notice that comes through, and they do the checks that the XSLT cannot do. So they will be checking if the dates make sense, if the values make sense, if the words themselves make sense. There's quite a mix, dates, values, texts. These are warnings, so they're not rejected, but the contracting authorities will get these messages. Ideally, they would correct them. We submit again. So the source of errors is that the dates don't make sense. You cannot have an opening of tenders before you have received them. And you cannot have numbers that don't add up. So these are the examples of messages. These are actual texts which are sent by our teams to the contracting authorities to correct, to encourage them to correct. Will get published anyway. These are rejections. So these messages, these notices are the ones that didn't get through at all. So you can see there's a lot of case by case. So other reasons is a main one. But then, for example, if you link back to a previous notice earlier in the procedure and it's a wrong, it doesn't fit together, doesn't make sense, it will get rejected. If you're using the wrong form for what you're trying to say, it also gets rejected. So these are the types of things picked up by contractors, teams in-house. To help you with the quality, or to give you an overview of what's going on, we will start sending you an email every month, which will summarize the errors and warnings in the last 12 months. So a rolling 12 months of what you've submitted, because we keep track of what has been rejected or sent an error for. We'll send you to each eSender mailbox we have for you. You'll receive this by email. We'll explain how we'll send it to you. You will then be able to tell us if you want to continue receiving it, if you want to add other emails. So you can see how useful it is for you or not. I think it should be useful. It's useful for us to see what's happening with the data. Some of you, I think there's maybe a dozen left, are still using daily reports, so an Excel that gets sent to you every day. We plan to phase out these daily reports, so not many left using them, and they depend on a fairly old technology, which is quite hard to maintain, so I'm not sure how long we can keep it running for. Again, we'll email you separately for those still using them. If you do need to get your own custom reporting, you can use the API and search for notices and then get the information you want. So you can search based on the status and the time frame published to from dates. And if you can interpret what comes back, you can build your own reporting as needed. So our plan is to have the monthly summary we send to you, and the rest of the reporting you can pick up from the API. An example of what the report looks like. Well, it looks very much a bit like the slides I've shown you, but you'll get the graphs of the warnings and the errors. And on separate tabs, you get the actual exact numbers for each error and warning. So you can see if your numbers are going up or down, if you've addressed something or not. You can see the tendencies of where they're coming, where the rejections are coming. So we hope this will help you identify where you can improve the quality on your side. So it saves us rejecting or sending you warnings, but it'd also be a better service for your contracting authorities to help them upstream the data quality. Just a few other issues, just to highlight them or to remind you. So make sure your customers are informed. Like, for example, when you can use the agendas of Form 14, we have some guidelines when to use them. Mix of language, I know some of you have had questions. We've tried to clarify what it means. So a mix of language means that entire sentences shouldn't be in a language different to the one that's been declared. So if you say something is in English, all the text should be in English. It's okay if some words, some technical terms are included in the text, but you shouldn't write things in English and then say to find the tender documents and write that in another language, because a person reading in English will not be able to understand it. So we're trying to make sure that the reader can understand everything that you've written there. But it's a little bit case by case, so if you have any questions, you can get back in touch. Some of you might have noticed on the 1st of August, we changed the way we worked. Our contractor, in some cases, used to correct a notice so that it would get through, so that we wouldn't reject it. So rather than rejecting it, we would correct it and publish it. Now we either accept it because it's good enough, or we reject it and don't let it through, and then the contracting authorities must fix it. So in some cases, this has caused some confusion, but now it's very clear that we don't touch your notices anymore, which will cause some other problems. We've informed you about a change to the internet, the network security protocol we're using. So TLS is at the network level. When you connect to eSentool, you should use 1.2 or higher, 1.3 to connect. 1.0, 1.1 are very old security standards, which are not supported. They're deprecated. The standard is no longer handled. And we hope we have helped you identify those of you who might be concerned. So if you notice something on the 1st of September, we made a change. and rolled it back because some of you couldn't send it anymore. Please make sure you have another look. Bring in your technical teams. It can be quite technical. Please move by the 30th of November. We made our acceptance environment available so you can test it there. So if you get through acceptance, you'll be fine in production. In general, we don't have any more plans to change the current TED schema or rules. Both you and us, we're all very busy with eForms. That's where we want to focus our efforts and your efforts. But again, we cannot guarantee there might not be any legal changes or anything essential, which we might need to ask you to change. So our plan is to keep things quiet, but still make sure that you have the people available to support your systems. Like, for example, this technical change, Commission IT services no longer support it. We have to move with them. Okay, useful links. I think you know them all. So the help desk, the contact form, the wiki. We have the schemas, which you can always download, also available on the wiki. And conditions of use, just a reminder of what terms we work for you and you work with us, and how you work with your own customers. So that's all for today's presentation. If you have any questions, I saw some came in the chat. We'll try and catch them now. Ana Maria, I'll try and look at the chat as well.
Hello, everyone. I hope you hear me.
Yes.
Thank you. There was a bit of my connection was just a little bit down for a second. So we will start the session for question and answers. The first question for Karl comes from Jonas Kaiser. So will the simulation environment have the same transitional period as the production environment?
Principle, yes. Yes, you should be able to use simulation for the 2 months, for all of December and January. So you can try it out.
Okay. We will write it down in case we will have some other information. The next question comes from another eSender, and I would like to apologize in advance if I will not pronounce the surnames sometimes properly. So from Iris Vonderheid, when will the monthly reporting email first will be sent out? So when are we planning to send the first reporting email?
We should be able to send it by the end of this month, I think. So certainly before the end of the year. So either you will catch the October numbers or the November numbers. So the next few weeks.
Thank you. From Gloria Grottolo, how is it possible for non-eSenders to receive the report on errors and warnings?
Well, you'd have to tell us which eSender you want to get the errors and warnings. Normally we send it to the senders that are concerned. So tens of different reports go into each eSender that are specific to them. Because in my presentation, I gave the total of everyone, but they might be skewed towards some of the bigger eSenders. If you contact the eSender you want to deal with, and you can let us know the email, we could add different emails for particular eSenders. So additional people who are related to it.
Okay, I hope this answers the question. From Gianpaolo Celito, how can we manage notices from regions where we have bilingualism, 2 languages to publish a contract like Boson or Val d'Aosta?
Yes, if you want to publish in 2 languages, you basically publish to two parallel notices. So it's a notice which has two languages, and you provide all the information of the notice in two languages. So this happens in Cyprus, in Brussels. Quite a few countries have bilingualism. Some choose to publish in two languages. So you might publish in your own language plus English if you want to reach a broader audience. But there is a way to send two notices that go together. I think in our FAQ we've updated the details of how this can be done. So yes, so don't mix in the same notice. You send two parallel notices with the same number.
Thank you. Another question from Katia Infante. In order to receive the report, is it enough to be registered as an eSender?
Yes, we'll be using your main email, the eSend email you provide in eSentool. So we'll start with that one, which I think it's one email per eSender. And it's that list which we'll use to get started. If you have more people or different emails, we can add them later on. Apply to us. So yes, for now, just be registered as an eSender. We know how to find you.
Thank you, Karl. We will wait a bit for some more questions. Nothing is coming. Just to remind that separately, of course, if you have other questions, to send them after to us by email.
If I can, while waiting for other questions to pop up, I would just like to remind something that we have reminded already in the last meetings, and that regards the protection of personal data. We know that every once in a while in notices that we publish in TED, personal data is published as well, names, telephone numbers, contact addresses of physical persons. And occasionally as well, the people concerned request us to delete this data. So in order to prevent this from happening, the best way would be if you could ask your clients, the ones sending you notices for publication in TED, to actually use, to avoid using personal data and to use instead general mailboxes, for example, general telephone numbers, general contact points, and not individual persons' contact points, because that indeed is helpful in terms of making sure that all the rules regarding the protection of personal data are properly respected. Okay, that's just a reminder that I'm sure my colleagues dealing with data protection would appreciate.
Yes, indeed. Very good that you mentioned it. I don't see any other questions for the moment in the chat. I hope nobody is sending them somewhere else.
If people are not willing to use the chat, and if someone by any chance at this stage would like to put a question orally, well, that would be the moment if you want. You just raise your hands and we will give you the floor.
No raised hands?
If not, it seems that Karl, you made a brilliant presentation. Everything is clear. Everybody has all the information that they need to keep on using the current eSenders management tool. If I can just go back to one of the questions, the question that Gloria raised about the possibility for non-eSenders to receive the reports on errors and warnings. Of course, what Karl said is absolutely right. If you, by any chance, need to get such a report, you should address the eSender concerned, because the purpose of these reports is to inform the eSenders of errors or issues that they may be facing, so that the quality of the notices can be improved, so that they can take the appropriate measures to make sure that their clients send notices that can be indeed sent for publication. That's the whole purpose of the reports, and of us sharing the report with the senders. So in order to share any reports with non-eSenders, of course, the eSender concerned must authorize it. Otherwise, it's not something that we would be able to do.
Still no other questions for the moment, and no raised hands.
So, thank you very much, Karl, for the presentation. Thanks, Ana Maria, for collecting the questions, and thank you all the ones that raised questions. One of the inconveniences of having an online meeting is that we have a fixed agenda, and that we cannot anticipate any presentations. So we have foreseen that Karl's intervention and the questions and answers could go until 3:30. That's not the case. The next set of presentations is foreseen for 3:45. So we will just have a longer break. So we will.
Manuela, if I might say before the break, so we have two questions. If I may now.
Oh, good.
Great.
That's fine. So I'll rest my case.
So from Kenya Dural, will it be planned to allow sending F14 before a contract notice has been published? So Karl?
Yes, it is possible. I have to read the guidelines again myself to be sure. There is a period of time where you can send an F14, but in the presentation, I have a link to the guidelines which says when you can do this or not. Yes, sorry, I don't know it off the top of my head. But follow the FAQ guidelines. Or, sorry, the guidelines which I linked to again in the presentation.
So this question, so if I hope it clarifies. If not, maybe you can give us more details if something was not clear. It was sent only to me, I guess. And from Mr. Emir from Austria, you have mentioned something that he should have gone into greater detail, but I'm not sure for which part. So I don't know if you could say more. In regards to errors, okay. So we will take it into account for the next presentation, but yes, indeed, the summary for the errors.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I could bring up the slide and go through the errors a bit more detail. I realize that some of the errors might pertain to only a few eSenders and not to others. So if I tell you that section 5 is often not filled as a warning or as an error, there could be some eSenders are not concerned at all, and some are very concerned. So in a way, the errors would be more useful once we send you the warnings and the reporting, so you can see for yourselves where you are mostly affected. Yes, it's true. I went very fast. So,
but maybe
yes.
it's worth, Karl, because we still have the time, if you can put the slides on again, because apparently there is an interest for that. Maybe you can put the slides on again and just go through them a bit more in detail.
Okay.
If it can be helpful for
Yep.
the audience, that would be great. Thanks.
If you can see my screen.
Again?
Okay. Try and get it back. So data quality ones. So these are warnings. This is section 5 of the contract award notices. But we get it again and again. This is where I think you can leave it empty and it gets through, but we recommend that you fill it. Okay, the number of tenders received. So this is if you tick which one's an SME, then you have to make sure it adds up. If you say there are 3 SMEs, then you should say that 3 SMEs are reported in the results. Contract award notice. Section 5, if you say there's lots 1, 2, 3, section 2, and then section 5, you should have a lot 1 and 2 and 3. Should add up as well. These are just warnings, so possibly is not lock-in. Yeah, contract award notice is the one to focus on. Okay, the errors, these are possibly more interesting for you. So, okay, technically you have to be aligned with the XML. The metadata has to be correct. This will mainly affect the UK eSenders. You can still send notices from the UK, for example, if they use EU funds. But that you have to make sure that you conform to this. I don't know if, I think this was mainly a problem in the first few months. I think it's less of a problem now. Fill in the previous publication. So if I'm talking about a contract award and I refer to the contract notice, I have to refer to it. I cannot leave it empty. I can't say I have a contract award without referring to the one before, if that's the type of procedure applied. Country code and NUTS code. So if I say the country is BE for Belgium, I cannot put a NUTS code in Germany. That can be checked. It's true there's 2 different fields, so it is possible to make the mistake in the systems, but it's not difficult to check that they line up. Okay, this one I recognize from filling in tests myself. Your CPV code, there's a certain convention to the CPV codes, so which align with works or services or supplies. Again, this you can validate before you submit. Duplicate, no external document. This is the identifier you give the notices. There are some cases where we can receive the same, some cases we can't. Generally, it's better just to give a new number whenever you submit a notice again. Dispatch date, indeed, if you sent it to us today and you say the dispatch date was last week, that's not correct. So you can also check that on your side or generate it maybe automatically or semi-automatically. This is another one, S2. Yes, if you've awarded a contract, you should say how much was the total value of the procurement. These ones, so I think these errors can be checked mostly before you send it. If you can check it, that will remove these errors. But okay, we've got 25% of others, so there's a lot of case by case. If we send you the reporting, I think that will really help you because you can really see which ones affect you. It could be you validate some of these values and don't have the problem. This contract award notice is the main one to check. Here for the manual checks, this is a little bit more tricky. So for example, wrong language, that is tricky. It's very difficult to see who is doing what. Sorry, do you want to go into, I missed the message, the chat. Country ratings, okay.
That did just appear. So this error quality issues go into country ratings.
I'm not sure. I must check with my colleagues, DigiGrow. We can answer that question. We can get back to you, Emia. Country ratings. I think they do, but I'm not sure which ones and what level.
We will write down anyway some of these questions, and we will inform the users that asked us. There is another question that I received in private. So it's from Romania. So I will translate it, but it might be that it's not to be misunderstood, the questions, but I will try to translate it. So how can we announce the cancellation or resiliation of a contract already published in TED? Now, Karl, depending on what the user means by the cancellation in this sense, so the discontinue of procedure is one thing. The annulment, I don't know if in Romania the user wants to ask something else. So maybe in this case, if you can send us a separate email, that would be better. For the discontinue of procedure, for the moment, we are using the contract award notice by specifying that the procedure is discontinued. But I'm not sure that the Romanian user was asking this, so that's why. So, Karl, you want to add something else, or? Why not F14? From Marek. Why not using the F14?
That's not a correction. You have to announce that you stop the procedure. So you contract award notice allows you to stop it like that. F14 is to correct something at the same stage.
Exactly. Any more questions? Nothing yet. So again, sorry. Marek is writing to us. So, but they send the contract award notice, and now they want to correct it, but I'm not sure. If it is about correction of a contract award notice, yes, but the question was related to the annulment or discontinue of procedure, which we are accepting. So,
maybe indeed the colleague who sent the question may try to detail it a bit more, and we will try to find an answer.
Yes, exactly, because we will provide by email, and of course, please also, if you can write me in private, your email address, just in case the name maybe with which you have registered now here, it's not clear. Okay. Manuela, back to you.
Yes, thank you. Again, if there are any other questions that you may want to raise, we are here to answer them, even if not now, during the next few days. You are more than welcome to send any questions. If there are any more questions related to Karl's presentation, just clearly indicate that you are referring to question to Karl. So in general, as you may have understood from Karl's presentation, we are done with changes to the current schema. We will focus next year indeed in the new eForms schema, and we will have a lot of work in view of the implementation, both us and you. We will limit any changes to the strict minimum if there are indeed any need for technical changes. Otherwise, I think that we have lived the last main change to the current eForms schema, and we will be focusing on the new one. If there are no other questions at this stage, though I see that there are still discussions ongoing about what needs to be done in a specific case, I would stop now and would invite you to come back again at 3:45 Central European Time, so in 20 minutes roughly, so that we can continue and indeed initiate the big tour around the eForms implementation. So see you in 20 minutes. Thank you. Dear colleagues, we are back. I hope that you had a nice break, and I hope that you can see my screen.
Yes.
Yes. I hope that you can see something that is appropriate, like a nice PowerPoint presentation. So we are back with our agenda, and in this next hour, we will give you an overview about eForms implementation at the level of the Publications Office to start with. So we will share with you what is happening. This is going to be a very general overview about the implementation of the different aspects of eForms. And then we will have another presentation from our colleagues from DG Grow, more specifically by Carmen, who will give us an indication of what is going on at the level of the member states in terms of implementation and what's new in terms of the eForms regulation. So without any further delay, let me start by walking you through what the Publications Office has been doing as regards eForms. Of course, it would help that if my screen would actually work, which does not seem to be the case. Excuse me for a second. Okay, seems to be working now. So I will start by reminding you a little bit of the legal timeline for eForms. I will go through the implementation components and give you an overview of the status. And I'm sorry again, because it seems to be, okay. I was right to apologize in advance for any hiccups. Okay. The legal timeline for eForms. As we all know, the eForms regulation has been adopted in September 2019, so a little more than 2 years now. And it applies from the 14th of November 2022, meaning by that time we will be receiving and processing both the current forms and eForms. So anyone who has already implemented eForms will be able to send eForms for publication at INTED. And that means also that the Publications Office must be ready with all its systems, all its applications to be able to deal with eForms. And then 1 year later, by the 25th of October 2023, use of eForms will become mandatory. By then, all of you will have to have done all the necessary changes in your system so that we can, you can send us eForms for publication in TED. Because by the 25th of October 2023, the Publications Office will only receive, process, and publish eForms and nothing else. A little word about the components of the implementation of eForms. As you know, as you've heard it already on a number of occasions, Publications Office is in a particular, occupies a particular place in the public procurement workflow, in the publication of public procurement workflow, and we play several roles at the end of the day. So we define the schema that needs to be used in order to transfer notices. So we define the schema, the rules, and everything that goes with it. We make sure that all the tools in the publication workflow are there to ensure that we can receive notices. Notices can be properly validated, processed, and then published. And for that, we have to make sure that all the necessary tools and applications are there. And we have to make sure that we actually receive the notices. So we have, on the one hand, an interface that we use to publish, to allow any contracting authority to fill in and submit notices for publication in TED. And on the other hand, we have to make sure that we put in place all the services that are needed for you to be able to send us the notices that your clients are filling in your own applications. So we have a triple role in here. We ensure the schema, we ensure the tools, and we make sure as well that notices can be submitted and received by us by providing the necessary interfaces. And this is what we have been doing so far. This is what we will be doing for eForms. eForms means that we have to adapt our different applications or redevelop even the applications to make sure that we can deal with eForms. So we will indeed be getting into more detail about all these components in the next few days. So on the one hand, you will have full details about the eForms schema by Yves Jordan tomorrow. We will have presentations prepared by my colleagues dealing with the future eNotices application, the eNotices 2 application. The future eNotices application will be used not only by those who need to fill in directly notices, but also by eSenders. who will be able to send us notices through this tool. So eSentool as such will no longer be available. However, notices can be sent through eNotices tool, or will be able to be sent through eNotices tool. Then we will develop a new tool for validation of eForms. That's the central validation service, and my colleague Bertrand will give you a nice overview of all this tomorrow. We will not get much into detail about TED Monitor, which is our internal processing tool. That's less of your concern. However, we will be indeed discussing a little bit how eForms can be visualized, and Karl will give you again a new presentation about eForms visualization. And the ultimate aim of eForms being to publish forms in TED. We will share with you the plans for the TED website on the one hand, and for the future TED website. eForms is a huge change, and we came to the conclusion that it would not be possible to have eForms fully implemented in the current TED website. So what we will start by doing is to ensure that TED will be able to publish notices as from November 2022. However, to exploit fully the richness of the TED website, we need to wait for the new site that should be available later on. Then, last but not least, as regards everything that you need to know about machine-to-machine services, my colleague Yanis will go through the different documentation and information which is available, and will also introduce you to the future TED API. So, in terms of where we are for the implementation. For the implementation status, we have launched already all the developments that we needed to launch, except for TED API, which is about to be launched, but not yet. And we have been publishing all the information that is needed for anyone that will develop new applications related to eForms in CMAP already since 2019. At the end of 2019, we published the first version of the schema, as you may have remembered. And we have been enriching this information, which is available via CMAP. That's where we publish all the announcements, but which is available in a new site, the TED Developers Documentation site. And in this TED Developers Documentation site, you also find documentation or a link to GitHub, where you find specific information for developers, what we call the eForms software development kit, or more, in a more familiar way, the SDK that Yanis will introduce you, to which Yanis will introduce you tomorrow, for those who haven't seen it yet. A very high level idea of what the implementation roadmap will be. We will, considering that all the developments have been launched, we will be ready by November 2022 with all our applications. So the final versions of the applications will indeed be made available throughout the year 2022 until November. The only exception will be the new TED website that will only be available in March 2023. However, as I said before, it will be possible to publish notices in TED already this year. It will be possible to retrieve eForms notices already this year. The only thing is that we will not be able to exploit fully the richness of eForms in the current TED website. We will be able to do it in the future one. Just for calming anyone that would be afraid that there would be no time for testing, the ultimate or the final versions of the applications will be indeed ready by November. However, we are currently under development. So a number of developments will be made available progressively, even if it's just in a beta mode throughout the year. We cannot at this stage give you a precise indication of when exactly you will be able to test, when exactly you will be able to send your notices to see if they pass through our systems. But we do expect that between now and August, it will be possible to test the different phases. It will be possible to test reception, or submission and reception of notices, that you as eSenders will be able to start sending us at least sample notices to see if they pass, if they come through e-notices to and are received at the publications office. We hope to be able as well to put in place the validation system in beta mode, of course, but to be able to see if the notices that you will be producing can indeed pass validation. We expect as well that it will be possible to view these notices in PDF or HTML, and that we will all be able to test the full workflow and make sure that things can actually pass and be published in TED, and this before the date. This is needed for us. We need to be able to do all these tests before we go live. And of course, it will be needed for you, because most of the notices that are published in TED come through eSenders. So we are very well aware of the need to make sure that you have enough time for testing and enough time to make sure that your systems can communicate with ours. We also know that not all eSenders will be ready on November of this year, of the next year, sorry. We also know that some may wait until October 23 to actually start sending notices. But we are making all our best to make sure that the ones who need to be ready in November will indeed be able to be ready. Somehow, as I have said on a number of occasions in the past, we, Publications Office, and you, eSenders, we are more or less on the same boat, in the sense that we all need to be ready, we all need to do developments, we need to make sure that our tools are made available for our clients. And so this is a common effort. We share concerns, we share issues, and we would very much like as well to share best practices. So if you have any hints, any good ideas that you would like to share with us, that's what we would like to hear from you as well. Of course, we are also here to listen to your concerns and your worries, and to try to address them in the best possible way, as we have done in the past. And with this, I'm finished with the presentation. Again, my apologies. I trust that I will be the only one having issues with presentations, because my colleagues are much more gifted to all this than I am. So thank you very much. Ana Maria, feel free to start shooting the questions.
Yes, thank you. So the first question is from Damian. It might have been, it came very early, so maybe the presentation already answered, but I will read it again. We can read in the eForms regulation that it shall apply from 14 November 2022. We understand that eForms must be available on a voluntary basis as from November 22 and will be mandatory in October 23. And the question is, does a member state can only propose eForms from October 23 or they have to offer them from November 14, 22?
From what we can answer, but my colleagues from DG Grow are in the meeting as well, so they can complete if needed. As far as the Publications Office is concerned, we need to be ready in November 22, but if member states are only ready later on, we are fine with that. The only thing is that by October 23, we will no longer be able to process the current forms. So by then, there is an obligation for everybody to use eForms. So I would say, just to make it simple, you're not obliged in November 22 to send eForms, but you will be obliged in October 23 to send eForms.
Thank you. Just to clarify for the question from Rolf Kewit, so the slides are present already on the agenda of the website. So Karl Ferrand already has put the link in the chat for everyone that wants to check it. The next question from Austria, will there be a migration of the notices to eForms?
Okay, if by migration of the notices to eForms, you mean that, for example, in TED, we will be able to see both current notices and future notices? Yes, there will be a migration of data from the current TED website to the future TED 2.0, as we call it. In terms of the possibility to reuse data that has been published in the current forms in order to create future eForms, in principle, yes. I will leave it for the presentations that will be given tomorrow and the day after for further detail. But we will indeed work at some stage on a system that will allow you to reuse the information that you have already entered in current forms at the moment when eForms will be in place. But for details, for technical details mainly, I will leave it for my colleagues tomorrow and the day after to give you a more complete reply.
Amir replied that actually, yes, this is what he meant. The next question from Rolf Kewit. After having got the release 040 of the eForms software development kit, is there also a roadmap for future eForms SDK?
There again, my colleague Yanis tomorrow will give you more information about that. There is indeed a roadmap for when things will be made available, and especially for the SDK. You must also be aware that this is a huge development. I'm pretty sure that at national level you have realized that this is a huge development. And there are lots of things that are a bit unknown. We are trying to make the best, to make as much information available as possible and as fast as possible. And we will indeed try to give at least an indicative roadmap for when things will be available. Knowing that anyway, the time is passing by very quickly and that 1 year will fly, certainly, which means that we need to be as ready as possible. So we need to have the information out as soon as possible. So indeed, we need to have a proper roadmap both for you and for us.
Thank you, Manuela. There is another question from Austria. Will there be a test system for eNotices too?
Again, a test system for eNotices too. In a way, yes. So currently, we are under development, and we have a way to test ourselves. That's clear. The idea is that at some stage we will be able to share the testing environment with others. We are not yet there. Though the development started already a year ago, we are not yet in a position where we can share the test environment. But as soon as it's possible, yes, we will. And we will definitely appreciate any help that we can get in testing the application. Again, on Wednesday morning, Enrico Campanella will give a presentation on eNotices 2. I'm pretty sure that he will address this issue as well.
Yes, we have some questions which, yes, more or less will be addressed in the next presentations. We still have some time until 15, so I can still read them. A question from Mol Domagoj. Will it be possible to get the rule sets related to the technical background of the validation system?
Can you repeat, please? I didn't get it fully.
If we can get the rule sets related to the validation system.
Yes, I think that's one of the issues that Yanis will address tomorrow during his presentation, how it will be possible to have access to the rule set, because without knowing the rules, it's a bit difficult indeed to produce valid XMLs. So we are in the process of putting together the rules. There are a lot of them. Yanis will explain how these will be made available through the SDK, and Bertrand, during his presentation, he will also address the question of validation, so I'm pretty sure that he will touch a word about the rules and how to share them.
Yes. The next question is from Eduard Smirnov. Would you allow to have published the TED example, the TED contract notice, and then later to send an award in eForm format? Would you combine them into one publication flow?
In principle, that should be the idea. I'm afraid I cannot give you the technical details about it, but the idea would be that if you start a procedure with a contract notice based on the current standard forms, and if in the meanwhile eForms are there, you should be able to send the contract award notice in eForms mode, and you should be able to link one to the other. For the practical way in which it will be done, best person to answer is Enrico next Wednesday. But as a matter of principle, yes, it should be possible to put all the notices that are related to the same procedure in the same procedure.
Thank you. The next question is from Benjamin Martin. Will all the documentation be either updated, for example, the eForms business terms to schema mapping via the XPath, or released, so the documentation on the business rules used in the validation in a timely manner? And is there a roadmap for the release of these documents? Yes.
Okay, it's a bit, as I said previously, for the roadmap, I'm pretty sure that Yanis will be able to give you more detailed information than I can at this stage. We are working on mappings. Actually, DigiGrow started a mapping, a very useful one, mapping the current forms with the eForms. And we are extending the exercise to the technical part. So to map the current XML with the future UBL. And as soon as it's available, of course, it will be shared. But I'm afraid I cannot give you at this stage an exact moment of when it will be shared.
Thank you, Manuela. So, and now I guess because we only have 2 minutes, we will take the last question that appeared on the chat from Jen Forcell. How do we make a correction, an F14, to a notice published on the current schema after transitioning to eForms?
That's a very good question. I would say out of the top of my head that in the same way that it will be possible to link notices under started with the current form schema and whose procedure finishes with the eForms, that it will be possible as well to issue change notices for notices started previously. And for that, most likely, we will have a converter allowing to convert current dead notices into eForms notices and apply on top of that the necessary changes. Again, I think that Enrico will be able to give you a much more detailed answer than I am, but in principle, that should be the way to work. You start a procedure today or next year, using the current notices. You have to issue a core agenda, but you are already using eForms. You should be able to indeed correct your notice using eForms.
Thank you, Manuela. And actually, these are all the questions that arrived in the chat. I think with the time we are okay.
Okay, so if that's the case, I will then stop.
Sorry, I don't know how to raise a hand.
Okay, but you are speaking. So
Can I interrupt? Hello, it's Timo Randberg.
Hi, Timo.
From Finland. I got an earlier response from you that it would be possible to or the old notices would be sent to you with the currency schema, and there would not be a converter. But maybe things have changed.
Well, again, I don't know it all, unfortunately. I would very much like to know it all. My understanding is that for the time being, we don't have a converter. That's clear. We are not yet in a position to offer a converter, but we know that a converter is needed because indeed some procedures will start with the current forms and will continue with the forms. So we will have to put in place a converter. When exactly, that's something that we cannot anticipate for the time being. We are trying to finish all the other developments that are already ongoing. But logically, it should be possible indeed to start a procedure. And then if you have to do a change to a notice, if you have to publish a contract award notice, to be able somehow to reuse the information that is already published. So I cannot give you the details. I cannot tell you exactly how it's going to work, but it should work, especially because the transition period that we have is very short. We have 1 year, less than 1 year, you know. So it's not feasible that after October 23, we maintain our old systems to allow for publication. Anyway, this is against the regulation. So we will have to find a solution. Not sure if it answered your question, but anyway, that's something, the converter is something that definitely we are thinking about.
There are no more other questions for the moment.
Okay. So if there are no more questions, well, thank you very much for your attention and for all the questions. I do hope that you will get the answers that you are seeking tomorrow and after tomorrow. As I explained, my presentation was a very general, high-level one. And I'm pretty sure that for details, we will get more in the next few days. Having said that, now it's time to pass the floor to Carmen so that she can give us an overview about eForms implementation at member states. And that's something that we are very curious about. Carmen, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you, and thank you, Manuela, for the introduction. I will go through the eForms development and implementations in member states, and in particular, there will be two, let's say, main topics. The first one is related to the request for changes that we have already received for future updates of the implementing regulation. And the second one is related to the eForms development in member states. So as Manuela already mentioned, there is an eForms implementing regulation, as you all know, and the regulation actually foresees a specific role for the European Commission to monitor developments in member states related to procurement data. And the Commission should also assess the need on an annual basis to update the regulation by adding optional fields. And since last year, DG GROW has been receiving requests for improvement or update of the regulation. And in my next slide, I just want to briefly go through the areas related to the changes that, or change requests that we have received. The first one is related to the Clean Vehicles Directive. And some of you may have already also participated in the related meeting that we organized. Indeed, we organized thematic sessions with the participants of the eForms subgroup and the EXAP, and with our colleagues from DG Move, who's the policy owner of the Clean Vehicles Directive. We received 2 proposals from member states, and we also asked very informally to the member states their views on these proposals, and there was a clear preference for one of them. And there is a, let's say, internal work, especially at DG Move, on how to update it. The other area is related to innovative procurement. On this topic, we received just improvement to the current field. So there are no major changes at all, but improvement to the meaning and to some of the wordings of the code list. On green procurement, this is a very important area. We've already organized a thematic session on strategic and green procurement at the end of September this year. And basically, we gave the opportunity to member states who raised some issues to share those issues with us. Here, the challenge is to better assess how to improve the green procurement, let's say, field in order to provide, let's say, the best tool, being the eForms, to report on green procurement. There wasn't a specific proposal from member states, but we had very useful presentation. In particular, Italy showed their approach, their national approach to green procurement, which was very helpful. And in any case, the policy owners in C2 are currently looking into this, and they will probably update us in the coming weeks. Another area is estimated value in framework agreement. This is due to 2 court decisions on this topic, and we have our legal officers looking into this as well. And then some minor, let's say, changes related to variance or name of jury. And then there is an whole area related to errors. These are really minor that need to be fixed. So this is just an overview. And as I said, we gather like preliminary view of the member states on the Clean Vehicles Directive, and because it's quite imminent in terms of implementation, and it will help the member states to comply with the reporting requirements of the Clean Vehicles Directive. The other areas, let's say, have for the time being a very low, let's say, impact on the eForms. So there are minor changes, I would say, for the time being requested. Then the next section of the presentation is just to give you an overview of at the EU level what the, let's say, direction of member states is in terms of implementing certain policies, and also their overall timeline for the technical implementation of the eForms. And the first one, which is quite relevant, is related to the implementation, the use of the eForms for the below threshold, for contracts below thresholds. This is very important because we can clearly see that above 70% of the member states are in favor of using the eForms for a below threshold contract. This is very important in terms of transparency for the whole procurement environment. Then the use of the forms for publication of contracts, contracts award notices for individual contracts within a framework agreement. Also, this is quite positive. We have the majority of the member states that for the time being would like to do it, and in particular we have asked also whether they will do it through national guidelines or through mandatory use, and this is the view for the time being. This is still so for national guidelines almost 20%. And mandatory use about 35%, while there is still a lot of unknown decisions to be made in relation to how to make it happen. Use of eForms to publish minor notice modification, it's I would say 50-50. And in published informational bids received, this is only about 40%, and 36% no, 25% unknown. And this is important, using eForms to publish the voluntary notices. There are, apart from below threshold notices, we have the preliminary market consultation notice and the contract completion notice. These are voluntary notices. And it is good to see that as of today, already 68% of the member states intend to use eForms also for these voluntary notices. 14% no, and we still have 18% unknown. I can only add that we know that, for example, the contract completion notice is very important in terms of transparency. For example, for the civil society, this is really important to see the, let's say, the gap between, for example, costs or estimated costs and actual costs at the end of the, I mean, after the, let's say, the execution. And also the preliminary market consultation, we know it's useful in specific cases. So yeah, we are quite pleased about this direction for the time being. And then regarding the basically implementation of the SPD request into the eForms, we have 50% yes, 29% no, and 21% and they still have to decide for the time being. Now, in terms of where the member states are in, for what they would like to do for tailoring the code lists, just to remind you that can only be restrictions of the use of the code list, not extension. Only, let's say, 29% are going to tailor the code list. Most of the member states, about 57%, still don't know. And 14% will not tailor the code lists. Now, in terms of timelines for the policy implementation and decision, the policymakers in relation to the eForms will complete the decisions on the decisions that we've already gone through in my previous slides and additional decisions. Most of them next year. So this shows you the timeline for completing the policy implementation, meaning policy decisions. While in the next slide, we have asked member states to inform us about when they plan to start the technical implementation. And here we have a few member states that actually have started in the last quarter of this year. And the majority will start towards, let's say, mid next year, Q2, Q3 next year. And a few of them will even start in Q1 2023. What I can say is that we are aware that the first movers, okay, they are ambitious, but they might have some challenges as yeah, first mover means also taking, let's say, the development ahead of the game, and we hope that with what the publications office has already told you in terms of, for example, making available, even if it's just a test level, the central validation system, that should also help. So that's my presentation, and yes, let me know if you have any question. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. So I will start reading now the first questions. The first one is from Timo Rantanen. eForms business term 774 for green procurement. The code list definitely needs working. Would it be possible to have the code list fixed before going live with eForms, earliest in at the end of 2022?
Timo, thank you for your question. Indeed, we agree that it needs working. That really depends on the suggested changes. We have received concerns and challenges from member states. We haven't received potential solutions, but our colleagues in C2 are looking into this. In order to include any change in the next eForms update, like for the Clean Vehicles Directive, we need proposals as soon as possible, like in the next 3 to 4 weeks. So it's also a matter of time, because the regulatory process is separate from the technical one, and of course the technical one follows the legal. Which means that, yeah, I try to get you a view from Finland. that would be appreciated. And also if other member states, like for example, Italy or others have suggestions on specifically on green procurement, I invite them to share those with us as soon as possible, because as I said, it is for us, of course, a priority to make sure that certain changes that are needed soon, such as the ones for the Clean Vehicles Directive, are included in the next update of the eForms implementing regulation. Anything else will be, of course, a plus. If for you it's urgent, then come back to us with solutions. We, in any case, are working on it, but if you have a clear view on how it should be done, we can only welcome that. I don't remember, Timo, if you attended the thematic session on strategic and green procurement. Probably yes, but I think it was clear that there is an agreement on the fact that eForms are the reporting tool for public procurement, and that covers also green procurement. However, the way green procurement is now, the code list is not sufficient in terms of, let's say, clarity and even, quantity to satisfy the requirements or the needs and the current practices in member states to report on green procurement. So Timo, and please feel free to come back to me even after the meeting for anything on that about green procurement. Next question, sorry, please.
No problem. I wanted just to skip one and readdress it after, because there is a question from Anastasia Velichko-Popovic again about, so when will the changes to documentation code list will be finalized and locked?
Changes to documentation, is this technical? So are you referring to requests for changes to the eForms implementing regulation, and therefore, let's say, documentation related to those kind of changes and draft proposals? So are you referring to the legal process or to the technical documentation, Anastasia? Technical, so that's for the publications office. I think my colleague will, yeah.
Is okay, we will take it into account and we will address it to our colleagues, and I believe there will be an answer these days. The question from Edward Smirnov. Do you have some information somewhere available for every member state,
So member states, and I'm talking about this is only, we don't publish information related to individual member state online, or we don't make available information related to individual member states to the public. Member states are currently reviewing the decisions. We can only publish aggregated data. This is why you don't have the names of the member states in our presentation. Of course, each member state has its own country pages in the wiki. So if you are a member, of the team in that member state, which is basically government typically, and has access to your country page, then you can look at it on the wiki. But as I said, DigiGrow does not publish information on individual member states.
Thank you. Another question from Julien Louvrier. Is there a plan for systematically collecting and communicating the results of the tailoring work of all member states to e-tendering platform providers / eForms implementers?
As I said, I think it's the same kind of question. Because decisions are still ongoing in member states, we can only disclose aggregated data, and typically when the results will be completed, which is basically by I think one member state was even completing the tailoring of the policy in Q1 2023. Then what we will do, and probably before, we will summarize the information in a report of the eForms subgroup. But again, this is internal to the EXEP members, so to the members of the European Commission expert group on e-procurement.
Thank you. The next question from Norway, from Tor Müller. Is there a best practice somewhere on how a member state could present the results of their tailoring, changes to the changes to the fields and added rules for conditionally mandatory fields?
A best practice on how to present the results. What I can say is that there are member states that have made these decisions already, and they sent us, if you can think, Tor, at the extended, at the Excel file of the extended file related to the implementing regulation, they show even there what has changed. But if you want, in the subgroup meeting, in the eForms subgroup meeting, we can discuss this. This is entirely up to the member states on how to present. But I think I saw a nice presentation from Italy, where they have their own national group for eForms, and they have presented started, at least this was from a few months ago, the main, let's say, at the time, what they were intending to do. Yes, so we will discuss it in the subgroup. That's fine.
Another question from Karin. How many member states were included in the survey shown in the previous presentation?
So it depends on the question. More than 20 member states replied to our questions. For the two, especially for the last two slides, we included, that is actual number of member states, where you see those, let's say, boxes, and when a member state did not have a specific timeline, so this is just for the last two slides, then if the answer was unknown, then we could not include their timeline in that slide. And so for the technical implementation, I think we have about 17 member states that actually were able to tell us when they would start. I can confirm that more than 20 member states have replied to other questions.
Thank you, Carmen. For the moment, this is the last question that okay, now another one came. From Rosella, are the data in the GitHub, is the data in the GitHub more reliable and up to date with respect to the one in the regulation? Should we take them into consideration when discussing and proposing solutions?
So this is, we need to distinguish here. DigiGrow used to have GitHub as a tool also to gather questions and discuss issues related to the consultation process, but we are not using GitHub any longer. So we will announce that this will be closed. So no, not from policy or legal. I don't know if the Publications Office would like to make a comment on GitHub at the technical level. It's used, the publication, yes, Manuela, it's used to provide information.
It's information being provided through GitHub. The SDK, the software development kit, is available through GitHub. So if this is what you mean by is the data more reliable, I cannot say that the data is more reliable, but it's technical data. That has to do with the technical implementation of the regulation. As for the old GitHub that was used during the consultation, this was not managed by the Publications Office, this was managed by DG Grow, but it's not active for almost more than a year now. So hope that it answers the question. But anyway, for technical issues related to the implementation, to the technical implementation, Yanni's presentation tomorrow should be addressing all this. So you will get all the answers that you may be looking for.
Thank you, Manuela. There is a question from Marek, still related to the survey, and if you are able to share which member states were included in the survey.
Most of them. We cannot provide information, as I said, on individual member states. Most of them.
Okay. And another question from Edward Smirnov. You mentioned some national pages where member states are reporting their tailoring results. Is it an open information? Is the list of similar pages documented somewhere?
So as I mentioned, the EXAP, the expert group on e-procurement, has its own wiki. This is managed by DG Grow, and member state representatives for each country have access to that wiki, and in that country page they upload and they update information on the country developments. We have created a specific section on the eForms, and this is where member states are updating the data, and that allows us also to gather information on a more frequent basis without asking them to fill in surveys, etc. Country pages are only available in the wiki to the member state representatives of the EXAP. It is not publicly available information.
Thank you, Carmen. I do not see other questions for the moment. We already reached the end of this session. So Manuela, back to you.
Thank you, Anna Maria. I see that there is another question popping up. So,
So
is there a list of member state representatives of the national eForms sections?
This is personal data, so of course not. We cannot possibly share contact names or address. Impossible.
Okay. Anyway, I see that there is a lot of interest for sharing information from the ones that are a bit more advanced. And if you wish to do so, if you have the information, and I'm talking not to Carmen, but to the attendees, if you have information that you feel that you want and you may share, well, feel free to do so, either tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. If, of course, you don't feel like sharing this information, we perfectly understand, as we perfectly understand what Carmen is saying about not being able to share some information, because this is not information that the Commission should be sharing. Okay, but in any case, this meeting is also the occasion, if anyone wants to talk about their best practices, explain what they are currently doing, that's really the place where you can do it. And we would be very happy to hear, because as I said when I was explaining more or less what we are doing as regards eForms, we are facing some issues, as you may know, and if you have the solutions for those, we will be thrilled to take them on board and to implement them.
Manuela, if I may, the members of the eForms subgroup are, let's say, also most likely the people who also have access to the wiki, but certainly they are part of the team of the eForms at the national level. So I don't know if the Karin or the other attendees that are asking questions related to these people if they are members of the eForms subgroup. But essentially, we work with the member states. There is so if you are a member of the government, I mean, you should be aware of this, but otherwise you should liaise with your national e-procurement representative based on the governance and based on the national representative of the exec. That's all.
Okay, thank you again, Carmen, for your intervention, for your presentation, for sharing it with us what is going on. I hope you will be there also tomorrow and the day after. So if there are any further questions that people were too shy to address today, you will be able to take them. And I know that also other colleagues from DigiGo may be attending the sessions tomorrow and the day after. So we count on you.
Absolutely, and thank you very much for inviting us. Thank you, Manuela.
Okay, so we are closely coming to the end of today's session. It's 10 to 5. I don't think that there is already room for any conclusions at the time being. I know that there is a lot of interest in eForms, and I hope that we will be able to answer most of the questions tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. So and we are looking forward also for your contributions, for whatever ideas that you may have that will help us go through all this. Before we leave, I believe that my colleague Constantina has another couple of Slido questions for you. So Constantina, go ahead.
Hello again. Yes, we have a few questions, so you can log into Slido again. They're mostly rating questions on the presentations. So the first presentation, how useful was it? From 1 to 5 stars. The presentation, current status of eSentool and data quality, presented by Karl. So if you'd like to rate this presentation, and we will proceed afterwards with the rest of them. So I'll wait a bit longer, because not a lot of people have logged in yet. Right, 55. Let's wait another minute or so. Reaching 60, and the rating is a 4 so far, 4 out of 5 stars. Right, the next ones I'm going to go a bit faster. Well, everyone has been already logged in. All right, still most popular option is 4 stars. I'll move on to a question regarding this presentation now. So, do you think the monthly reporting will help you improve the quality of your notices? Yes or no? A simple question. And the vast majority says yes. Right, so 65 people have voted so far, and almost everyone says that the monthly reporting will help them improve the quality of their notices. Wait a little longer, and I'll proceed with the next presentation. All right, so let's move on to how useful was the presentation of Manuela, general overview of eForms. So it's the second presentation. Whoop. So again, 4 stars seem to be the most popular election. 67, 68. Right, so 48% of participants think it's a 4 out of 5 stars. All right, let's move on now to the rating of the next presentation. How useful was the last presentation? eForm developments and implementation in member states by Carmen. Okay. So again, 4 out of 5 is the most popular one. Okay. And we have lastly 2 multiple choice questions. First of all, when do you plan to start the software development for eForms? Already started? B, before the end of this year? C, first half of 2022? Let me check my, because it's all right. D, second half of 2022. E, in 2023. And lastly, I cannot say yet. So most people have already started or will start in the first half of 2022. It's changing to first half of 2022 till June 2022. Right, and regarding this implementation, we have the last question. How difficult do you rate the development of eForms? So very difficult, quite easy, or cannot say, because I haven't started yet, maybe. Right. So very difficult is the most popular option at 44% at the moment. All right, so very difficult, 44%. That's the answer to this question. 46, it's going up. And this was our last question for today. So this was it from me, and see you tomorrow at the end of the session, at the beginning of the session first. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Konstantina. That gives us a very good idea of where we stand, and we hope that we can contribute to make it less complicated, hopefully. So I would like to thank you again all for your participation, for your questions, for your patience, for bearing with us. And I would like to say goodbye for now. Meet you tomorrow as from 10 o'clock Central European Time. And we will have a full morning dedicated to both the SDK, the validation, and the eForms schema. So we will have a very interesting morning with lots of answers to the questions that you have raised today. And let's see if there are still more questions to be asked. Thanks again and have a nice evening. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.